Okay, at this point, I'm just gonna guess that they have all got their resume sorted by asking seniors on WhatsApp. So good.
So good for them.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and if your guys are a little shy to ask things on a public forum, feel free to use the Discord, and you can ping us personally also. It's fine. We'll try to answer as much as possible.
Guys
Okay.
can
Yeah.
also
Hello.
okay.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yeah, you
Yeah,
are.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. First of all, like, thank you, brothers, like, Tramin, for helping us out. Uh, so my regarding, like, when I was preparing my resume, like, one of the members who got intern last time, she suggested me as, like, like, I'm kind of passionate in writing stuff. So he suggested me to make a separate section for, like, specifically for writing and making movies, that kind of stuff. Because I have won some competitions already. So what do you think of that? But it's not directly related to any consulting or stuff like that. So how useful will that be?
Yeah. Ayush, do you want to take that?
No, you take.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be relevant to consulting, right? So one, and what you think is relevant to consulting is not probably a partner might view it from a different lens. So if you are actually good at something and what you say is pretty novel, right? Writing and filmmaking, that's not something that everyone does. So I think that would be a nice section to have. But again, keep in mind that these sections usually come a little lower, right? First, you have your basics, that is your ACADs, your WorkX, your PORs, or if any, those things do come on top. Then it would be a nice, good to have section somewhere, let's say in the lower middle, so that it does capture their attention. And since you do have some good number of points to put there, you can go ahead and do it. But I think one good way to try it is try making multiple versions of your resume and see which one looks good, right? You can put one without a separate section and one with a separate section, and you can just go through it and just see which one looks better to you. And I think you can take a call based on that.
Yeah. Okay, bro. Yeah, I'll try that. Thanks a
Yeah,
lot.
thank you. Um, Anyone else with any questions?
Yeah, I have been getting a lot of questions from these people on my DMs, like
Yeah,
in the last few
same
weeks.
thing.
I don't know why they're not asking, but maybe we can cover the three, four most common ones that everyone is asking.
Sure.
Okay,
Go for
so
it.
um, okay, maybe you can take this one. How important is communication in case script? Is it more important than solving the actual case?
Yeah, that is something that we hear quite a lot.
Yep.
Uh, sure. So, do you want to try take a first shot at it, or
Yep.
do I go? Cool.
Okay, I'll take a first shot. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I can be a little biased here, but the answer to this question for me is yes. I feel communication is more important. And the simple reason being that all of your batchmates and you have access to the same set of resources. It's not like you're going to prep from somewhere that is like, a secret resource. None of that is going to happen. All of you are going to practice the same set of cases. In fact, buddy cases are unique, but then everyone goes and exchanges those buddy cases as well. So eventually, it all boils down to then, how confident you are and how well you communicate, uh, what you're thinking or what you're writing to the interviewer. So after practice, I believe, yeah, more or less everyone is going to be at the same level. Obviously, some people are naturally excellent case solvers, while some really take a hit while solving a difficult or a challenging or a confusing case. But given the data that the interview case is actually not going to be very hard, it's going to be more of a very simple case, much simpler than what you would have practiced. The only downside is, or the flip side is, that you will be asked a lot of questions. So the cases that you practice with your case group, you just go with the flow, right? But in actual interview cases, a lot of separate questions are asked by the interviewer to check your thinking. Again, those questions are very easy. They just, if you lay down a formula, they'll ask what factors are you considering, right? So those questions are very easy, but most people flunk there because they're unable to convey what they're thinking, right? It's not very difficult to think of factors like, let's say, percentage of people in India who will subscribe to Netflix. It's not very difficult to tell what are all the factors affecting a typical Indian's decision. But most of the people will go ahead and flunk this particular question only because they are not confident enough, or they have communication issues, again, which boils down to confidence. So this leads me to a perspective that the entire objective of case prep is to go ahead and build your confidence, right? So focus on building your confidence, have more discussions with respect to communication in your case group. I've seen people giving feedback only with respect to the problem and how you solved it, the approach, but give more feedback with respect to the communication as well. That is equally important, if not more. Siddharth.
Yeah, sure. So as you said, right, communication is actually a pretty important component. But what you think is communication might be different from what consultants or even the partners think communication is. So by communication, we mean simple, easy to understand words without too much jargon and fancy stuff, right? So by communication, it doesn't mean that you have to go talk like a Harsha Bogle. You just need to be yourself, use simple English as much as possible, and communicate what you think in a clear, concise manner. So the idea here is, let's say you want to convey a fact. How do you convey it without beating around the bush? So usually what consultants do is they speak in points, right? They don't speak in long winding sentences. They try to speak in points of one, two, three, usually. But again, you don't have to follow all of that. Just try to keep your communication concise. And the idea is very simple, right? People need to be efficient. If you're able to reduce the amount of time you have to talk by 25%, you can do 25% more work. That is all the funda here is. So you just keep things concise. And the next thing that you do is, it's important for you to fail while doing case prep. Now, let's say you should struggle with communication sometimes. You should struggle with the other person understanding and all of that. It's good that it happens, because if it happens for the first time to you in the interview, it's not a good sign. So that's probably not something that everyone wants. So it's good if you fail. It's good if you see that something's not working. You'll have enough time to experiment. 3-4 weeks is, to be honest, good enough time for you to do case prep. And to be genuinely honest, from what I've noticed, uh, the lesser you do case prep, the more easier it is for you to do the final case with that partner, because the more you do, the more you overthink, and there's an obvious pitfall of you trying to overthink and screw it up. So for interns, it's set in a beautiful way where you have to just do 3 weeks, 4 weeks of case prep, go straight to the interview and do that. So that is set nicely. So nothing there, and that there is a basic test that a guy called Victor Cheng talks about. It's called the airport test. So basically, what they do is, let's say these consultants pre-pandemic used to spend a lot of time in the airport waiting for their flights and whatnot. So let's say if two consultants sit next to each other, would you be able to communicate and have a decent time with the person for about 1 hour in the airport waiting lounge? So that is something that the partners or the managers who interview you try to evaluate. Like, is this person someone uh, who I would be okay with work having in my team? That is something they look at. So try to also be a nice, decent person. Don't, let's say, if even if you have something that you fundamentally disagree with, you first listen, then you say that, hey, I have another point of view, what do you think about it? You put in a nice way. So you basically try to be a nice person. So just think of it, you're in a services industry. Let's say you go to a hotel or a restaurant, the waiter comes and blasts at you, you won't probably go to that restaurant ever again, right? So same thing, if you're not a nice person, and let's say the company puts you in a case, why will the client come back to you again? So you need to be a fundamentally nice person for you to survive in that industry. So these are things that they will subtly check. Most of us will be nice by in general, but in case you think you're not nice enough, just try to be a little bit more polite the entire process with good communication, and I think you should do fine.
Right. And one last thing to add is, as Sid also rightly pointed, this communication is not what you think. It's like, it's not polished English, or it's not fluent English. There are so many people without fluent English who do make it. It's more about conveying your thoughts in the best possible, or the most optimized manner, in the most, yeah, concise manner, right? One example that I recently saw, I was doing a case with a junior. This is how he went. So the statement was profits is revenue minus cost. He said, so as we know, profits are a function of revenues and costs, and hence profits will be equal to revenue minus cost. And we know profits are down. So can I know if revenues are down or costs are up, so that we can find out what is the problem? And I'm like, dude, it's like, profits is revenue minus cost. Profits are down. Could you tell me the trends with revenues and costs? Khatam. So that's optimizing your communication. You don't need a polished English for this. In fact, the more simple you keep, the better it will sound. And my only tip, if you're facing such an issue, like, not being able to present your words in a concise manner, take 10 seconds, take those extra 10 seconds. I mean, you are taking a 1.5 minute gap, right, before saying something. Take those extra 10 seconds, but frame your sentence, frame the sentence in your head, so that when you say it, it comes out in a structured way. It does not seem crowded or cluttered. That will be one suggestion. Okay. um Moving ahead, one more common doubt that I think even I said everyone would have, like, struggled with is, how many breaks can we take, and what is like the average or the highest amount of time we can take during a break during the case. Sid, do you want to take a shot?
So we come with a placement bias, right? So I think we took like what I think the maximum break I remember taking within my case group is like 3-4 days, and we tried to coincide that with the quizzes and ensign sessions so that we would kind of be optimizing for that. That is what we did. But I've seen people take as much as a week or two to kind of revise, right? See, you're as good as you learn from your mistakes, right? So people do 10-15 cases as a group, revisit for 2-3 days, and get better. So a break doesn't mean that you stop doing it. It basically means that you revisit things, or you try to do something else that would contribute to your cause. You just break doesn't mean you go to a Goa trip. Just clarifying here. So what you do here is you essentially kind of revisit things, that is zoom out, look at how things are going, where you want to work, just reassess internally and come back. For the placement session, as I told, we had 3 months in between, so we had a lot of time. We get to take breaks, but in the intern season, you don't have the luxury of time, so you need to be a little critical of uh, taking breaks. But again, breaks do help. Maybe shorter breaks, 1 or 2 days, but they will definitely help for you to look back at what you've been doing, because you need to have some sort of a goal or a vision to get somewhere. Now you can't just mindlessly keep doing something. So I'm pretty sure most of the people will take notes. So maybe revisiting the notes is a good idea. Or the other thing is, let's say you're doing things from one particular thing, you want to do the other way and see how that goes for another week. Those are the things that breaks helps you think. So you can think of a break time as a thinking time rather than a doing time. So yeah, that is how I would put it.
Right. In fact, I think most of us during placements had like a bad week of cases when we were not doing that well. I mean, it comes to everyone. It's just a bad week. That's the time when I think most of us would even went ahead and took a 3 day break or a 2 day break. And yeah, we did not go on a Goa trip. We didn't have that luxury because placement tests were going on. But it really helped us just, take our mind away from the same type of cases, the same type of frameworks. And even though we loved it, we were enjoying it, still that, that one break is sort of needed. And honestly, I took multiple breaks. I think I used to take like a 1 day gap every 7 to 8 days just to calm down, reassess.
Uh,
And in those breaks, I just used to go through my cases in the last 7 to 8 days, see where am I, see, try to identify a pattern uh, in the mistakes that I'm making and try to work on those. Okay, so that being said, Sid, you got the question wrong, by the way. So when I said break,
uh.
what I meant is during the case, the
Oh,
one.
during that break. Okay, my bad. I
But
thought
good.
like yes.
Okay, I mean, even this question needed to be answered. So now to rephrase it better, during seems like I have to work on my communication. Uh,
No, no.
so yeah, so during a case, when someone is solving a case and he needs to take a moment or a few minutes to write down his structure, how many times can he take that short number of moments, and what is the maximum length of that particular break that can be taken?
Yes. Um. So I mean, it depends, right? So when you initially start, people do take a lot of breaks because some things are not so obvious because as you do more and more cases, things are there in your muscle. They call it the muscle memory, right? So by practice, you get it. So in some areas, you don't have to take a break. For example, as Ayush said, na, when you say profits are revenue minus cost, you'll immediately ask it and then you'll start thinking. So as you do cases, where you start taking those breaks will evolve, but how long you take has a restriction, right? So for example, it is absolutely fine to take 30 seconds or a minute, and you can actually even tell to the interviewer or whoever is doing the case that hey, I'll take a minute or two here to think about it, and it's absolutely fine. And this break does two beautiful things. You can filter out all the nonsense that you want to say because you'll tell to yourself and you can filter it out. There are more often than not where you might think that, ha, I wish I hadn't said that. So that break helps you rectify all of that. And the second thing is taking a pause helps you frame things better and in a concise way, as he said. And the last thing that it does is it might also give you that little extra time to think of something that might not strike you the first time. It might strike after 10 seconds. Um, so all these things put together is there. When I initially started, I used to take breaks as long as 2 minutes sometimes. So you have this section called where once the other person is done telling the case, you keep asking questions. So what questions to ask? I used to take about 2 minutes to think, but over time that thing got evolved and came down to around a minute or something. So I would say somewhere between 30 seconds to 2 minutes is the limit, and anything below that is not essentially a break. It could be as simple as you could just cough two times and get that 15 seconds break. So you don't have to ask. So so you could. I remember once. Okay, so this experience I haven't shared with a lot of people, but yeah, I'll tell you. So what happened was when I first went to interview with Bain at 7 in the morning or something. Uh, Suddenly the interviewer flashed on my screen when I was waiting. So it took me by surprise and he asked me a question. I started answering, but I don't know, something just hit me. My brain was not functioning, so I didn't know what to do. So what I said was, "Sir, 1 second, my Wi-Fi is not working. Just give me a minute, let me fix it." And then I took that 1 minute to think everything back, and then it was a 20 to 25 minute smooth interview, and it was done. So these type of breaks do help. But there, once I started answering, I could say, "Hey, I need a minute to think." That won't be nice. So sometimes too, you can get artificial breaks by doing that, but breaks usually go from 30 seconds to 2 minutes, in my opinion.
Right. I think, yeah, that's a very good range, 30 seconds to 2 minutes. So I'll just add a couple of points there. I remember when I did my first case with a senior, I was not taking a lot of breaks, right? Because obviously you sort of become conscious, right? That's when my senior told ki, yeah, you're coming back very quickly. You're coming back like in 15 seconds, 20 seconds, 25 seconds. Uh, Now what happens is it sort of gives the interviewer an expression, or rather an impression, not expression, an impression that you're not thinking. So, take that time that you need to think, to frame everything properly, and then go back. Uh, Additionally, I remember one of my seniors also telling me that I mean 2 minutes is sort of an upper limit, but it's not a hard upper limit. You can take more than 2 minutes. It's fine, whatever amount of time you take, as long as you're coming back with something good. So people take 1.5 minutes and then they come back with, oh yeah, revenue is number of units into revenue per unit. Now that is mechanical, right? But towards the later part of the cases, right, especially in an actual interview, you will be asked a lot of questions that will bounce over your head, that might bounce over your head, or that might seem a little tricky. Take your time, structure your thoughts. It's fine. Even if you do take 2.5 minutes or even 3 minutes for that matter, it's not a crime. If you come back with something good, it's accepted, right? So just don't take any pressure of the number of breaks you're taking and the amount per break. I used to take a lot of breaks. I always used to keep taking 15, 20 seconds idhar udhar just to, structure my thoughts. One last thing is that uh, you need not take a break only when, confused or lost during the interview. So saying things like, hey, I'm a little confused here. Can I just get a few seconds to restructure my thoughts? Or can I just take a minute here to take a step back and review my process till now? Accept it. Fine. It's cool. Just remember, take it as a conversation, right? If you're having a difficult conversation with a friend, you do need some time to think, right? Take it like a conversation and don't stress too much about the break, right? So yeah, that's about the break. Um, that being said, one more thing is, yeah, breaks are important. But in my actual Bain interview, I don't know what was wrong with my interviewer. He was not letting me take any break. And when I say this, I mean it. He was not letting me take any break. So he was saying things like, so I was like, hey, just give me a minute, let me think. He's like, oh, and after 10 seconds, he would be like, oh, come on, Ayush, what are you thinking? Come on, think out loud. Let's discuss. Again, when I took 30 seconds, he's like, oh, come on, what are you even thinking? Let's just start discussing. Right. So some interviewers might be different or might have a different approach. So be used to that as well. Become used to thinking quickly and thinking on your feet, right? Like, and thinking out loud as well, like thinking on your feet and become comfortable with thinking out loud as well. And that's again why I say take case interviews as a conversation with your interviewer. If you have that perspective, thinking out loud becomes easier. Let him know. If you're confused, let him know, this is what I'm thinking, this is where I'm stuck. There's no point of scribbling on your pad, right? I mean, to be honest, 1 minute is enough for you to realize whether you'll be able to take the next step or not. When you exceed 1 minute, you're just planning your next step. But 1 minute is enough for you to realize whether you know this or not. So if you don't know this, just let the interviewer know that you don't know this and this is what I'm thinking. Right? And that's exactly what I did in my interview as well. And that worked out.
Fair
So
enough.
yeah.
And the entire process, right, of trying out and figuring things out, it's mainly to make sure that you're good at the basics, because as Ayush said, the final interviews might actually have some surprises thrown in. I mean, sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. For example, in my case, the standard instruction I was given in my final interview was, if I use frameworks, I'm out. That was the first statement he made. So, yeah, so you might have some surprises. So you stick to the basics, and surprises you'll be able to handle on spot. So if you leave the basics for you to handle on spot, then that will leave you with a lot to do with. So use this 1 month or 1.5 months time. So I think you have quite a bit of time to get used to the basics. And the final surprise, I think you yourself will be good at dealing it. Maybe you won't know that you will be able to deal it or not, but at that day something will come in and you'll be able to deal with it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's nothing to be scared of, really.
Yeah.
The surprise question will just include basic logic and common sense.
It's like that cat phenomenon. You take a cat to a corner and start threatening it, suddenly it will start acting like a cheetah. So something like that. If you're taken to a corner, you'll also discover something about yourself that you didn't know. So it's not like you can train for it, it'll automatically come. But it'll come provided you're sorted with the basics.
Speaking of surprises, one more utility of breaks can be to calm yourself down and get that regain that confidence. Because as I said, case interviews are very much about confidence. So it happened with me. Same Bain interview, 7 a.m. The guy flashed on my screen suddenly. Uh, I was expecting a tell me about yourself. I had my script ready, right? And I remember my case. The my friend who I did cases with, she had asked me to keep a copy of my resume on the table. Okay, and I did not. Obviously, who keeps a copy of your resume on the table? And especially in a consult resume. I mean, my ideology was that they have seen my resume, right? What's the point? So I was expecting a tell me about yourself. I was completely ready with it. The guy flashes on my screen. He's like, "All right, Aayush, good morning. Some jokes happened," and he's like, "Walk me through your resume." Now, and in an interesting turn of events, I forgot my resume. Like, I forgot what the content on my resume. I don't know. I just I became blank. Like, because I don't know how, but I had not prepared for this question. I had done an intensive HR preparation, but somehow I managed to miss this question. and and then thoughts started rolling. Oh shit, what's there in my resume? Oh damn, like there's this professional experience, this case club. Now what do I do? Henry had told me to keep my resume on the table. Why did I not keep it? She asked me to stick it on the window behind my laptop. Why didn't I do it? All the thoughts started, you know, coming to my head. And then I did the weirdest thing. I asked him, "Hey, I seem to have forgotten my resume. Can I just take 30 seconds to recall it?" And I said it. Now, in you might think that this would have been a big negative, right? Who forgets their resume? But it's fine. Everyone's human. They know we're just engineering final year students. Like we're students after all. It's all right to make mistakes. I asked him. I closed my eyes. Somehow managed to create a structure, a cat's professional experience, POS, and they just explained whatever things happened, like in a chronological manner. I just explained it. So sometimes a short break can also help you to clear your head and just calm down. So yeah, um, I think these are the most common questions.
Yeah.
Siddharth, do you have any more?
Yeah, I think one final thing for interns that I'd like to tell is that please form case groups. Don't think that you can do it solo because it's a thing, right? One you in a case group, people usually take three roles. One is the person who's taking the interview, and the other person giving the interview, and another person who's observing. The observing thing is optional; it doesn't have to happen always. But the funda is that you need to do all these roles for you to understand from different perspectives how a case is done and where you can improve. So if you think you can solo it, that doesn't help. So even if you don't know anyone, try to form a case group because that does two things. One, whatever I said. Second, it helps you with your beginning point of your networking journey, just talking to someone who you don't even know. So I think it's important that you form a case group and not do it solo because last year I remember a few people trying to do it separately and failing miserably because they were too late to realize that they had to do it as a group and not as an individual person.
Right. And one last thing would be yes, evaluate your chances for consult and accordingly plan your case prep, the intensity. But I would still say going ahead and doing a basic, at least a basic guesstimate preparation can be really, really helpful for two reasons. A lot of companies non-consult profiles do ask estimates in particular data science, data analytics, and even finance. Like Nomura is known for asking estimates because guesstimates really test your problem solving skills. And how much ever problem solving is glorified by consult, every person in every job is actually solving problems. So problem solving skill is something that is required everywhere. And second reason is that it helps you develop a structured mindset. You might not realize the importance right now, but with any question given to you in an interview, I mean, any question that will be given to you in any interview in any profile will eventually be sort of a problem, right? And if you know how to deal with the problem in a systematic manner, that's a skill that's highly, highly appreciated. If I give you a data science problem, here's a data set, you need to have a structured thought process to, sort of break down the features and basically develop an approach. Any question that's given to you, if you know how to approach it in a systematic manner, it can be very, very helpful. So, doing a basic guesstimate preparation is something I'll recommend to all of you, irrespective of your consult chances or interests. Right. Any more questions? I mean,
There
not
was
that you have
one
been asking
doubt.
questions.
The person couldn't unmute her mic, so she was
Okay.
asking if they can apply for these companies like MBBs or other consult companies off campus. How much
I think Siddharth
is that
has
worth?
knowledge there. I don't have
So,
knowledge in that thing.
as
Siddharth
far
has.
as I know, these companies don't recruit off campus unless it has been at least 1 year after you've graduated from IIT Madras. That is the policy they usually tend to follow. But there are other consulting firms apart from McKinsey, BCG, Bain, uh, and the other ones that don't come to our campus that you can apply for. For example, I think there is Octus Advisors that does frequent off-campus hiring. Then there are other consulting firms that don't visit our campus but still hire. Like
Dalberg
there is
visits, but they do off campus
uh,
as well.
LEK. There is a company called LEK Consulting. There is AT Kearney. So some of them.
Strategy and
So there are quite a few companies you can apply to, and yeah, you can do. But for MBB, I think it has to be at least 1 year after you have graduated before you apply. That is what they currently follow.
And
And
I think there was another part of the question: is it worth it? I don't know what is meant by that question. I mean, if you make it to MVP, yes, it's worth it, I guess. But you'll the process remains similar, right? You'll have to evaluate what are the chances you have to get a shortlist, which, by the way, will be more difficult off campus, right? And then accordingly deciding the intensity of your case prep and then going ahead and doing the prep. And again, case prep might be a little difficult because you don't have like a batch of people preparing alongside you. You'll be doing it separately and you'll have to find people who are applying off campus, which will be few in number. So
so,
yeah.
and talking about if consulting in general is worth it, in case that was your question. So I'll just lay out the pros and cons for you from my understanding, right? So uh, people like me and Ayush, usually we tried a lot of things in our first 3 years, right? And we probably figured out that we don't want to code, and I was not interested in core. So once you have put these two things, the options available to you in India are very minimal, and those options should also lead you to something, right? So let's take what consulting does to you. So let's say you go in, you learn. They call most companies call the undergraduate consulting programs, at least in MBBs, they call themselves finishing schools. That basically means that you learn a lot of things over these 2 years. Could be from time management, work management, being concise, how to talk with C-suite executives, how to go about your work stream, how to strategize. You learn a lot about industry. So let's say each consulting engagement usually I heard goes from 2 months all the way up to 6 months. So if you work in a particular case, you do a deep dive into that industry, so you'll get a lot of insights about that industry. So what these things do to you is you become hot property for other companies looking out for people to join in middle management roles. So your exit opportunities are great. That is one way to look at it. And let's say after 2 years you figure out, hey, I like this consulting business, I'd like to continue. You can continue within the firm, provided you're a good performer within the firm. That is one. There are some potential downsides as well, right? For example, this life is probably not for everyone. It does take a lot of your out of your time, right? So I've heard that people work about 60 to 70 hours a week, which is probably not for everyone. So maybe if someone likes to do a 9 to 5 job 40 hours a week, this is probably not your arena. And the next thing is that it also drains a lot of your energy. Maybe if you want to do something, right? For example, some people nowadays like to do a side hustle. Let's say let's take the most popular case. Let's say you're working in a company and you also want to run your own YouTube channel or social media channel. maybe this is a little difficult to do from consult, but I have heard that there are some cases where the consult workplace is also evolving. So like you have full-time employees. I was told that in some firms you also have this concept of half-time employees where you're paid half the salary but you're only expected to do half the work hours. So maybe it's an evolving workplace, but it's not something that you have a lot of data upon. But these are some downsides, and it's also very socially draining. So if you're not a very social person and if you like to work on your own and not in teams, then maybe you should consider some other thing. But again, these
Also
are usually,
traveling.
yeah. There used to be a lot of traveling. I'm not sure about now because of
It's
the
reduced.
pandemic.
Yeah,
But
it's reduced.
uh, so let's take a general work stream of a consultant. Usually goes like you take a Monday morning flight to your client location, come back on a Friday evening or a Thursday evening, depending on the scenario. So if travel is not your thing, then probably you should look otherwise. But again, these are the general pros and cons. And there is one more thing as well that you should know, that the learning here is high, but you also need to put in a lot of effort. So consider all these things, and I'm pretty sure if you Google management consulting, you'll have some hundreds of videos talking about management consulting and all these. So feel free to go. There are a lot of people who make a business out of training people to get into management consulting. So that is how big the industry is. So you can definitely Google and learn a lot more, because we ourselves are new. We have not done even one hour of consulting till now. So it is what it is. And maybe you can ask from the interns right now to know about their experience on how their intern journey was, because maybe they're better poised than us to talk about that. And all these companies also will have their PPTs and everything, so they'll talk about it a lot there. So maybe you don't have to take all that effort by yourself. Usually, most things in Insta are presented to you in a plate. You just need to grab it.
Right. Awesome. I think we can close the session, right? If you guys have any queries, even the
Yeah.
slightest of doubts, feel free to reach
Yeah.
out. We'll try to answer as much as possible.
Yeah, and one common instruction would be that, I'm sure most of you are a part of a case group, and maybe not all members of your case group have attended this. Feel free to discuss the learnings from this session with your members of the case group, so that way knowledge is propagated a lot more quickly, because at the end of the day, case solving, preparing is done as a group, right? What you've noticed is people get offers as a case group. Like everyone in the case group does well or everyone cups. It is very unlikely that one person cups and everyone else does better. So the concept of RG is better left to ACADS and not here.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a lot, Janisha.
Yeah.
Deep, she's here.
If there are no other questions, thank you, Ayush and Siddharth. I know this has been a really useful session for everyone who has attended. And to those who have attended, I would just like to say that you can reach out to them on the Discord forum that we have set up, so that it's more streamlined. So thank you all for attending, and thank you, Ayush and Siddharth, again. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Hi, guys.
And good luck to all of you.
Oh, yeah. All the best.